Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says there's no plan to change Australia Day and people should be more focused on voting for the voice referendum. Local bee farmers have a win over their kiwi counterparts over the use of the word manuka, and Elon Musk reckons Tesla is going to become the biggest company in the world. It's Friday, the 27th of January, 2023. Welcome to Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael. I'm excited about the show today.
Why is that? I get nervous when you say you're excited because usually it comes with a bit of a stitch up for me.
No stitch up here. You know, as you know as well as I know, some days like the 26th of January, Australia Day, are pretty quiet on the news front. So we have to become a little bit more creative. And towards the end of the show, we've got some great stories. One specifically for you, because I just don't think you'll be able to keep a straight face.
Oh, okay. That is a fantastic tease. I have no idea what is coming. And I am not convinced that it does not involve a stitch-up, but you know what? Let's see how we go. You do have an interview coming up today as well. Charlie Robertson is your guest. He's Executive Director of Centuria Bass, a leading alternative asset manager.
Yes. So think of it like private lenders. So you have banks and then you have private lenders. Charlie is all about the property sector, or primarily about the property sector. And so what Centuria Bass does is lend as a private lender, mostly for construction and that type of, not residential so much, but construction. So he's really tapped into that market. Interestingly, private lenders are getting busier and busier as rules change for the major banks. So it's not a bad time for them. It's a really interesting chat with Charlie.
Yeah, sure is. It's coming up a little bit later on. The main story this morning, though, Sean, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says there's no discussion or plan to change the date of Australia Day, and rather than debating the date, people should instead support the Indigenous Voice to Parliament plan.
Yes, he said the plan is a step towards national maturity and reconciliation. While Albanese conceded January 26th, the anniversary of the first fleet's arrival in 1788, while that's difficult for some people, he urged support for the voice referendum due before the end of this year, saying it will improve recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians. He also welcomes moves to better celebrate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture in official events. That is good news. The Prime Minister said the voice is a way to advance national reconciliation.
Sean, it seems that as a nation, we're becoming increasingly unsettled about holding Australia Day on January 26th, and we really kind of saw that yesterday.
Yeah, we sure did. There were protests in several cities around the country, which many participants call Invasion Day rallies. Now, the biggest one was probably in Melbourne. It looked like there was at least 10,000 people marching in that city. There were thousands of people in Sydney as well. The debate over the voice added heat to some of the rallies. Greens Senator Lydia Thorpe, who is Indigenous, addressed a Melbourne rally saying there's a war between the government and Aboriginal Australians. Senator Thorpe hasn't declared whether she'll vote for the voice, though she has suggested that she won't, saying it needs to be more than an advisory body.
And there were quite a few business leaders in the Australia Day honours list.
Yeah, there certainly were, and plenty of academics and scientists. Probably the highest profile is Andy Penn, the former boss of Telstra. He led that company for about 10 years. He was awarded an Order of Australia for distinguished services to business, charitable organisations, youth and the arts. Congratulations, Mr. Penn. The Australian of the Year, of course, is Taryn Brumfitt, a body positive advocate. If you get a chance, read her story. It's a cracker.
Yeah, it sure is. And we'll just give a special mention to a listener of Fear and Greed and someone that you've spoken to previously on the show, Sean, Giles Gunasekara, who you actually spoke to about 14 months ago, if my calculations are correct. And we know that adding anything up on the fly is not really something I should do. But he was recognised yesterday for his services to social welfare and community services, and he received the Order of Australia. So congratulations to him.
Yeah, good on you, Giles. Well done.
Now, Sean, the local market was obviously closed yesterday for Australia Day. What about international markets?
Wall Street's had a quiet couple of days. Microsoft's cautious outlook in its quarterly earnings report put downward pressure on markets. Tesla also came out yesterday. I'll tell you a little more about that later in the show. Oil and gold prices have been pretty steady, and the Aussie dollar has held on to Wednesday's gains. It's trading above 71 US cents.
All right, we'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, a bit more on the big inflation story this week. On Wednesday, figures from the Australian Bureau of Statistics showed that annual inflation hit a near 33-year high of 7.8% in the December quarter. Now, pretty much everyone thinks interest rates will rise when the Reserve Bank Board meets on February 6th.
Yes, Michael, just recapping the data, the headline 1.9% rise over the quarter was driven by big increases in both domestic and international travel and accommodation, and a big and expected rise in electricity bills. The underlying rate of inflation came in at 6.9%, up from 6.1%. On a quarterly basis, it was 1.7%. Now, that's the highest quarterly reading since the series began back in 2003. It has really big implications, not just on interest rates, but pretty much everything tied to consumer price index rises. So, for example, social welfare payments from pensions to unemployment benefits are tied to inflation in some manner. So to university loans, annuities, toll roads, many commercial property deals, so the rents retailers pay. It may take a little while for the inflation indexation to feed through, but it will. And there'll be some winners there, welfare recipients, for example, but there'll be losers too. People paying back university loans, toll road costs, that type of thing. Back to interest rates, investors now expect the official cash rate will shift from 3.1% to 3.35% in a couple of weeks' time. Of course, Michael, that will go straight through to higher mortgage rates.
Yeah, ouch. All right, Sean, the Australian Communications and Media Authority is warning that scammers are still impersonating Optus in emails nearly 4 months now after the company suffered a cybersecurity breach.
ACMA says the scams will often mention the recent Optus data breach and ask people to click on a link to update or confirm their details for security reasons. In other cases, emails might look like a payment reminder asking a person to click on a link to pay a fake outstanding bill or update your payment method. The regulator says the messages often urge customers to act quickly, threatening to close their Optus accounts if payment is not received immediately. The advice ACMA gives is if you're unsure, ring Optus and ask them. And that is the best advice because that way you'll find out whether the email is true or not. And if you're not sure, don't open it, ring Optus.
Have you noticed, Sean, just how good some of these scams are getting? And even just the ones that I've received. I haven't received one like that impersonating Optus, but I did receive one not long ago that was impersonating a toll road operator. And it was someone that we do have an e-tag kind of with. And it was so convincing that I actually reported it to the company, said, I've received this. I don't think it's legitimate. Can you confirm it? And they wrote back saying, no, definitely don't open it. It is a scam. But
yeah,
I was nearly fooled.
Yeah, I mean, I get PayPal phone calls all the time. I get ATO phone calls all the time. And, anything that I get via email, I always look at the link. And if you look at the link, that gives it away almost immediately. But, if in doubt, don't follow the instructions. Just ring your provider and see whether it's real.
Yeah, really good advice. Now, Sean, it looks like people are returning to buses, planes and trains, with toll road group Atlas Arteria reporting a return to pre-COVID transport trends.
Yes, traffic flows actually fell back during the December quarter slightly, but over the full calendar year, 2022, flows were up more than 8% and are now just 1% below 2019, which of course was ahead of the pandemic. Atlas operates major roads in the US, France and Germany, so it's not talking about Australian roads, but it is listed on the ASX. It's just interesting that traffic levels globally are back to where they were pre-pandemic.
WiseTech Global, one of the country's leading tech stocks, will spend $325 million to buy US-based transport management software group Envase Technologies.
That's right. WiseTech is a logistics software company. Now, if you've bought something online and then tracked its delivery, you probably have used WiseTech software. The software does much more than that, helping companies manage tariffs, regulation, and taxes across jurisdictions around the world. It's always been an acquisitive company and a very successful company here, doing more than 40 deals since March 2016. CEO Richard White said the deal was strategically significant. Envase has more than 1,300 customers in North America, including trucking companies, ports, depots, and warehouses.
Now, this is an interesting one, Sean. Hospitality giant Mantle Group has fired all of its casual employees and rehired them under a new agreement that ensures it does not have to pay them penalty rates on Australia Day.
According to a report in the Financial Review, just 10 days after winning full penalty rates for the first time in 22 years, Mantle's workforce of up to 700 casuals across 15 venues were handed termination notices on Monday this week. Mantle immediately rehired the workers through a different entity with an agreement struck in 2019 that does not pay any weekend penalty rates. While the agreement pays public holiday rates at 225%, Mantle's job offer includes a blanket clause saying the employee agrees to work all public holidays without penalty rates and to swap them for other days decided by the company. Staff are also told to keep the employment and pay office secret under a broad confidentiality clause. Not a good look.
I was going to say that is certainly not a good look, is it?
It's not.
All right. Now, Sean, I mentioned this one at the top of the show. Australian honey producers have scored a win in their legal tussle with New Zealand over the use of the term manuka honey in the UK and in Europe, though the Kiwis say it may be a short-lived victory.
Now, I don't know whether you've ever worked with beekeepers or in that sector, but
that's quite a niche kind of thing.
Yes.
So I can safely say I have not worked with beekeepers, Sean.
So I have done some work in that sector. That is a ferociously competitive bunch of people.
Of course. God, you've had a varied career, haven't you? From the Reserve Bank to working with beekeepers.
Yeah. Not so far apart, those two. Yes, it is a very, very competitive. And it's obviously bees are the bedrock of pollination, which actually allows things to grow and food to eat and things like that. So without bees, we don't actually have a food chain. So incredibly important. And man, they are ferociously competitive, and they're also very fearful of illness and diseases hitting bees, which is natural. And so they're very, very wary of that. Anyway, I digress here. So Australia and New Zealand have been locked in legal proceedings for about 5 years now, Michael, after a group of New Zealand honey producers sought to prevent their Australian counterparts from using the description in various countries, the manuka description. That's according to Bloomberg. Now New Zealand's Manuka Honey Appellation Society, there's a name, the MHAS, Manuka Honey Appellation Society, has discontinued its High Court appeal in the UK to trademark the words Manuka honey and withdrawn its application for a certification mark in the European Union. Of course, Manuka honey has a great brand, and so that's what the fight's all about. Now, the Australian Manuka honey crowd are calling it a win, though the Kiwis reckon it's just a strategic ploy and they'll be back. At stake is access to the international Manuka honey market, which is forecast to be worth about $1.3 billion annually by 2027. Manuka honey is particularly sought after for its antibacterial properties. Apparently, it has plenty of health benefits, and it's made by bees that pollinate via the manuka tree. Now, the manuka tree certainly grows to New Zealand and only some parts of Australia. So you know more now about bees and honey than you ever thought you would.
Yeah, and look, that's a long legal battle. 5 years is a long time. You'd think after that long, even the mention of the word manuka would be enough to make you break out in hives.
Yeah.
It's a long setup, and I don't know whether the payoff was there.
No, it's good. It's all right.
Okay, all right, thanks. That's a fine concession you've made there, Sean. We'll move on to overseas news, shall we?
Yes, let's.
All right. Now, you mentioned this one earlier, and I'm most intrigued. Tesla's share price jumped more than 5% after the company said it will produce 1.8 million cars this year, and revenue for the December quarter was higher than expected.
The company made $3.7 billion during the quarter, up nearly 60% from a year earlier, and a record for the electric vehicle maker. Now, the share price jump was welcome, but remember, it fell 60% last year. In fact, it was more than that. It was about 65 or 66%, I think. Musk was at his robust best during the earnings call. He said buying Twitter is good for Tesla because it will drive demand, and his follower count of 127 million speaks for itself. And Michael, I quote, "The net value of Twitter to Tesla is gigantic, obviously." It's just not that obvious to me. No, I tell you.
No, and I think that follower count, people would have still followed him without him buying Twitter.
I'm not sure. That's right. That 127 million, That was probably there or thereabouts before he bought it.
Okay, all right.
He also said he thinks long-term Tesla will be the most valuable company on earth, and the company has more great ideas than it knows what to do with. When asked about recent price cuts to Tesla, which some shareholders aren't that fussed about, he said it was important to make vehicles affordable and demand was very strong. In fact, this January, it's been particularly strong. So, as far as Elon's concerned, off and beyond to become the biggest company in the world.
He sure knows how to grab a headline, doesn't he?
It's incredible.
Actually, perfect segue into someone else who knows how to dominate the headlines. Donald Trump will be allowed back on Facebook and Instagram, with the social media platform's owner, Meta, saying it will reinstate the former president's access.
Yes. Now, Mr. Trump has the most followed account, or at least he had the most followed account of Facebook. Then it was barred on 7 January 2021, which was the day after hundreds of people stormed the Capitol in his name. Meta said back then his posts ran the risk of inciting violence, hence they barred him. Mr. Trump also lost his YouTube and Twitter accounts, though Twitter last year reinstated him. It's not really clear whether Mr. Trump will jump back in. What's interesting, now we know he started his own social network, Truth Social. Under that, he has told regulators in the US that he will, hence he's obligated to, make his posts available exclusively to Truth Social for 6 hours before he can share them on other sites. Can you imagine Donald Trump sitting there wanting to tweet something and deciding, I'll put it on Truth Social, which has limited numbers of followers.
Yep, I'll start the stopwatch and I'll come back in 6 hours and share it with everyone else.
Highly unlikely.
I suspect that is very unlikely. Finally, Sean, from Donald Trump to skinny jeans, which is just a frightening thought, really. Skinny jeans apparently will never die, according to the CEO of Levi Strauss.
I know you're a fashionista, Michael.
Do you?
Yeah.
Do you know that?
Look, I'd like to say I suspect it, but I suspect the opposite. Anyway, this story really is for you. You're a very thin man. And that boss of Levi Strauss is a guy called Chip Berg. He said that women's skinny jeans, particularly the 311 and 721 designs, they remain the top-selling style. So they're skinny jeans, women's top-selling style. That's great. As he put it, they will never die. But, and I quote Mr. Berg for you, half of our revenues on bottoms this past quarter came from the looser, baggier fits. Apparently it's you Gen Zers buying baggier jeans.
Hang on. I'm not a Gen Zer. I am firmly in Generation Y. I am pretty much the definition of a millennial, because millennials are from like 1980 to 1994, I think it is. And I was born in 1986. So Gen Z, don't you go tarring me with the Gen Z brush. Thank you very much.
Okay. The other thing you did say, thankfully, the trend is towards lower rise jeans rather than high rise. And I've got to tell you, high rise jeans never look good on no one.
But the low rise jeans, aren't they the ones that kind of hang?
They don't look too good either, but they look better than the high rise. I mean, what's wrong with mid rise? I ask.
Sean, there are so many problems with this story. Like, I think it was the fact that she started with, what was it? I know you're a fashionista, so this story is for you, and then proceeded to tell me all about women's jeans. I just, you know what? I know this is the story that you started out with today, saying I've saved this one specifically for you, but I kind of wish you didn't.
What I did like, and listeners may not have heard, is your guffaw when I quoted Mr. Berg. You laughed and then stopped yourself because you knew we were a very serious podcast. The quote, half of our revenues on bottoms this past quarter.
It just sounds funny. I know it's the jargon for the industry, but
I know.
To someone that's got, I might have been born in 1986, but I have the sense of humor of a child.
I think that'll do us for the day, Michael.
I suspect so. Up next, the Fear and Greed Daily interview with Charlie Robertson, Executive Director of Centuria Bass.
Yeah, it's all about private investors and private banking for property groups.
Yep, guaranteed you will learn something there. That's coming up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Friday, the 27th of January, 2023. Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget that new episode of How Do They Afford That sitting there as well, which is all about emergency money this week. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.